luxury store ignores an elderly woman. The next day, she returns and leaves everyone shaking. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below where you're watching from. Now, let's dive into another touching story that will surely move your heart. It was a sunny morning in New York City, with chaotic traffic and streets bustling with tourists and locals. Amid the city's buzz, one place stood out for its sophistication and exclusivity: the luxury store Empyrean, a hallmark of American high fashion, located on Fifth Avenue. Its grand facade boasted enormous glass windows showcasing meticulously arranged displays of unique pieces, each presented as if it were a work of art. It was the kind of store that only a select few had the courage and the means to enter. Early in the morning, the employees began to arrive. They were young and impeccably dressed, wearing tailored suits with the brand's logo embroidered on their chests. Their conversations revolved around their favorite clients: celebrities, tycoons, and influencers who loved to post stories while trying on the most expensive products. For them, every client was an opportunity to shine and earn generous commissions, but only if the client appeared worthy of their time. "Yesterday, I served that famous player's wife. Can you believe it?" said Ashley, one of the more experienced sales associates, adjusting her makeup in the reflection of a display case. "She spent over $20,000 in less than an hour." "$20,000? That's practically a year's salary for most people," commented Stephanie, a newer associate, while arranging some catalogs at the front desk. "Exactly why I love working here. We only deal with the creme de la creme. No money? Please stay away." The chime above the main door rang, announcing the first customer of the day. The employees looked up, expecting someone glamorous, maybe an actor or a well-known businessperson. Instead, in walked an elderly woman, dressed in a worn wool coat, outdated shoes, and a hat that looked like it belonged to a bygone era. She carried a faded fabric bag that had clearly seen better days. Her posture was upright, and her eyes calmly scanned the store's interior with a curious gleam. The employees exchanged glances immediately. Ashley rolled her eyes and whispered, "What's this lady doing here? Did she lose her senior citizen tour group?" Stephanie tried to stifle a laugh, but the tension in the air was palpable. Oblivious to the judgment around her, the elderly woman walked confidently toward one of the central displays, which featured the season's latest handbag designs. She stopped in front of the display, observing each piece closely, as if assessing its quality. "Good morning," she said in a soft but firm voice, carrying a sense of wisdom acquired over the years. "I'd like to see that handbag, please." Ashley, standing behind the counter, let out a deep sigh before getting up. With a forced smile, she responded, "That handbag costs $8,000, ma'am. Are you sure you'd like to see it?" "Yes, please," the elderly woman replied, unfazed by the condescending tone. Ashley walked over to the display slowly and deliberately, as if every step was an effort. She retrieved the handbag and placed it on the counter, but without the usual care reserved for wealthy clients. The elderly woman picked up the bag gently and examined its stitching, lining, and metallic details. "This is truly a beautifully made piece," she commented, smiling at Ashley. "Could you tell me more about the materials?" "It's genuine leather, imported from Italy," Ashley replied quickly, with no enthusiasm. "As I said, it's a high-fashion, very exclusive piece." The elderly woman nodded, still examining the handbag. She seemed entirely unaffected by the cold, impersonal treatment she was receiving. But Stephanie, watching the interaction from a distance, felt uncomfortable. Though new to the store, she knew this wasn't right. Even so, she didn't dare step in. "And that necklace?" the elderly woman asked, pointing to a piece of jewelry on the other side of the store. Ashley sighed again, but before she could respond, Stephanie stepped forward. "Of course, ma'am. I'd be happy to show it to you," she said with a genuine smile. "Thank you, dear." "You're very kind," the elderly woman replied, following Stephanie to the jewelry display. Ashley crossed her arms and whispered to a colleague, "Naive girl. She's wasting her time on someone who clearly can't afford anything." As Stephanie showcased the necklace, The other employees started whispering among themselves, some chuckling quietly. The elderly woman, however, seemed completely oblivious to the hostility. After some time examining the pieces, she thanked Stephanie for her help but said she needed more time to think. "I'll be back tomorrow," she said with a kind smile as she walked to the exit. As soon as the door closed behind her, the employees burst into laughter. "Tomorrow? Sure, like she's really going to buy anything here," Ashley mocked. Stephanie remained silent, feeling uneasy about her colleague's behavior. Something about the elderly woman intrigued her. Despite her simple appearance, there was a natural dignity and elegance about her that didn't match the cruel jokes. Stephanie decided to keep her thoughts to herself, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the woman wasn't who she seemed to be. The day went on as usual, with the store attending to its regular clientele. However, the elderly woman's presence lingered in Stephanie's memory, leaving her wondering who she was and why she had chosen that particular store. Little did Stephanie know that the woman would soon return and change their lives forever. The next morning at Empyrean began like any other. The team, composed of impeccably dressed sales associates eager to cater to wealthy clients, was oblivious to what was about to happen. Stephanie, however, couldn't shake off the memory of the elderly woman who had visited the previous day. Something about her gaze, her serene demeanor, and the stark contrast between her simplicity and the store's opulent atmosphere had left an impression. The store's ambience was more than luxurious, it was exclusive, designed to intimidate those who didn't belong. As the other employees, led by Ashley, began cleaning the glass counters and reorganizing the displays, Stephanie glanced outside, her eyes wandering over the bustling street. That's when she saw her again, the elderly woman from the day before, wearing the same worn coat and holding her faded bag, walking towards the store with determined steps. "Look who's back," Ashley remarked in a sharp tone, noticing the woman's presence. "Do you think she finally scraped up enough money to buy one of our paper bags?" Laughter echoed through the store, but Stephanie felt a pang of discomfort. She knew it wasn't her place to intervene, but the cruelty of her colleagues was hard to ignore. The elderly woman entered, and the chime above the door brought a brief pause to the murmurs among the employees. "Good morning again," the woman greeted in her calm yet dignified voice. "I decided to return and take another look at the pieces I saw yesterday." Ashley exchanged a sarcastic look with another employee but took the lead. "Oh, of course, ma'am. What exactly would you like to take a look at today?" she asked, emphasizing her words mockingly. "The handbag I saw yesterday," the woman replied, unfazed by Ashley's tone. "And I'd also like to see that scarf in the window." "The scarf?" Ashley let out a short, fake laugh. "Sure, I'll get it for you. Just so you know, it's $2,000. "I'm aware. I'd still like to see it, please," the woman said, her tone unchanging. Ashley turned with a smirk and went to retrieve the item while the other sales associates chuckled quietly. Stephanie remained silent, observing from a distance. When Ashley returned with the scarf, she placed it on the counter with an exaggerated flourish, almost as if presenting a prize. "Here it is, ma'am. It's made of pure silk, hand-dyed by Italian artisans. Truly a one-of-a-kind piece." The elderly woman took the scarf carefully, feeling the texture with her fingers. Her expression showed genuine admiration, but Ashley's forced smile suggested she thought it was a waste of time. "It's beautiful," the woman said. "Thank you for showing it to me. I'll keep thinking about it." "Of course," Ashley replied with a fake smile. "But don't take too long, okay? These items are highly sought after." The woman nodded and continued browsing the store. At one of the displays, she noticed a necklace with precious stones that caught her attention. She approached the counter and waved at Stephanie. "Good morning, dear. Could you help me with this necklace?" she asked with a kind smile. Stephanie, surprised to be addressed, immediately stepped forward. Just as she was about to assist, Ashley intervened. "Stephanie, don't worry. I'll handle this. Go help another customer." Turning to the elderly woman, Ashley added, "This necklace is very expensive, ma'am. Just so you're aware, it costs $20,000. "Yes, I understand," the woman responded calmly. "I'd still like to see it if that's not a problem." Ashley hesitated for a moment before retrieving the necklace from the display. She placed it on the counter with a motion that seemed unnecessarily careless. "Here it is. Just be careful, all right?" Ashley said with a condescending smile. The elderly woman examined the necklace carefully, admiring the brilliance of the stones. But before she could say anything, Ashley interjected again. "Ma'am, just out of curiosity, do you actually plan on buying something today? Because, honestly, these items aren't cheap." An awkward silence filled the air. The elderly woman looked up and responded serenely, "I'm still deciding, my dear." "Thank you for your patience." Ashley let out a small sigh and crossed her arms, clearly irritated. The woman gently placed the necklace back on the counter and thanked her again. Before leaving, she paused. "You have a very beautiful store here. But the service leaves much to be desired." Ashley opened her mouth to respond, but the woman was already gone. The sound of the door closing echoed through the store, leaving a brief, uncomfortable silence. "Leaves much to be desired?" Ashley finally broke the silence, laughing derisively. "Please, does she think she's in a position to critique anything?" The laughter resumed, but Stephanie stayed quiet. The image of the elderly woman walking out with dignity, despite being treated so poorly, stayed etched in her mind. She knew something was deeply wrong with how her team handled clients like that woman. Yet she wasn't sure what to do about it. Meanwhile, outside the store, the elderly woman paused on the sidewalk, taking a deep breath. Behind her serene expression was a flicker of sadness. She looked at the store's facade for a few moments longer before turning and walking away slowly. To her, the incident was not just a moment of humiliation but a bitter revelation of how people were still judged by appearances rather than character. Inside the store, the employees continued laughing and whispering about the incident, but Stephanie couldn't bring herself to join them. Something was about to change. She could feel it in the air. That elderly woman wasn't an ordinary customer, and this wouldn't be the last time they saw her. When the elderly woman left the Empyrean store, the cold morning wind wrapped around her like a bittersweet farewell. She adjusted her worn coat, shielding herself from the biting breeze that stirred dry leaves along the New York sidewalks. Despite the humiliation she had just endured, her stride remained steady, and her expression serene. Every step echoed the determination of someone who had weathered far worse storms. She walked a few blocks until she reached a small cafe nestled in the heart of the neighborhood, a cozy and charming place with antique wooden tables and a display filled with artisanal treats. When she stepped inside, the chime above the door announced her arrival. The barista, a cheerful young woman, greeted her warmly. "Good morning, Mrs. Evelyn." "The usual?" "Yes, dear. A black coffee and a slice of that apple cake, if you still have some." "For you, we always do," the barista replied with a genuine smile. Evelyn chose a table near the window, where she could watch the hustle and bustle of the street. Her eyes wandered over the urban landscape as she stirred her coffee absent-mindedly. Despite the cafe's cozy atmosphere, there was a melancholy undertone to her expression, as if she carried an invisible burden. As she savored her cake, her old cell phone, an out-of-place relic in a world of sleek smartphones, vibrated on the table. She picked it up carefully and saw a familiar name on the screen, Ethan. For a moment, she hesitated before answering. "Hello, my son," she said, her voice soft but filled with warmth. "Mom, how are you? Are you home yet?" The male voice on the other end was deep, with a concerned tone. "I'm fine, dear. I made a stop at the cafe before heading back. How are things at the office?" "Busy as always. I'm finalizing the last details for tomorrow's investor meeting. You know how it is?" Evelyn smiled to herself. She knew the fast-paced rhythm of her son's life, but also understood that he always made it a point to check on her, even on his busiest days. "You work too much, Ethan. Don't forget to take care of yourself," she said gently but firmly. "I know. Just a few more weeks and things will calm down. I promise we'll spend some time together, just the two of us." "I'll hold you to that promise," she replied with a light laugh. "But tell me, Ethan, are you happy?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, as if he were carefully choosing his words. "Yes, Mom. I'm grateful for everything we have. You taught me to value what's truly important, and that's what keeps me going." Evelyn smiled, her heart warming at his words. Despite everything, she knew she had raised a good and honorable man. After ending the call, she stayed at the table for a few minutes, lost in thought. Her son Ethan was the CEO of one of the country's largest brands, but she had always made sure that wealth and power didn't pull him away from his humble roots. However, memories of her own life began to flood her mind. Evelyn hadn't been born into wealth, quite the opposite. She grew up in a small farming town, working hard from a young age and learning the value of every penny. When she married, she had to fight alongside her husband to build a decent life for their son. Despite the struggles, humility remained her guiding principle. After her husband passed away, Evelyn refused to rely on Ethan, despite his countless offers to have her live with him. She preferred her modest little house, filled with memories and stories. There, she felt connected to what truly mattered, her essence. After finishing her coffee, Evelyn stood up and waved goodbye to the barista before stepping back out into the chilly air. On her way home, she passed by a park she often visited. She paused for a moment to watch children playing, couples strolling hand in hand, and dogs running across the grass. There was a simple beauty in the scene that always brought her comfort. Finally, she arrived at her home, a small two-story house in a quiet neighborhood. The cream-colored walls showed signs of age, but Evelyn kept them impeccably maintained. The front garden reflected her care. Colorful flowers, neatly arranged, lined the path to the door. Inside, the atmosphere was cozy and filled with memories. Old photographs adorned the shelves, showing Ethan at various stages of his life, his first day of school, his university graduation, and even candid family moments. Evelyn ran her fingers over one of the pictures, reflecting on how quickly time had passed. She settled into her favorite armchair in the living room and pulled out an old photo album. As she turned the pages, memories of struggles and triumphs resurfaced. Despite all the hardships, she felt proud of what she and her family had built. Yet something about that day still bothered her. The treatment she received at the Empyrean store wasn't just an isolated act of arrogance. It was a bitter reminder of how the world had changed, often for the worse. People were judged by their appearance, not by their character. As she looked at a photo of Ethan as a child, an idea began to take shape in her mind. Perhaps it was time to remind the world, and those arrogant employees, that a person's true worth wasn't in their clothes or bank account. Evelyn picked up her phone again and made a call. "Hello? Ethan, dear, I need your help with something." On the other end, Ethan was silent for a moment, surprised by the determined tone in his mother's voice. "Of course, Ma. What do you need?" Evelyn smiled faintly, feeling a renewed sense of determination growing within her. "Tomorrow, I want you to accompany me to a special place. I have something to teach," she said, with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. After hanging up, Evelyn glanced at the clock. There was still much to prepare for the next day. But for the first time in a long while, she felt she was about to do something meaningful, something that went beyond herself and her own story. The morning dawned with a golden glow streaming through the massive windows of the Empyrean store, illuminating the meticulously arranged luxury items. Inside, the employees were gathered for their morning meeting, led by the manager, Gregory Lancaster, a middle-aged man with a rigid posture and a stern expression that rarely softened. Known for his obsession with perfection, Gregory was determined to maintain the store's exclusive image and emphasized it daily. "Good morning, everyone," Gregory began, adjusting his tie as he scanned the faces in front of him. "I want to remind you all that we're here to provide the ultimate luxury experience. This means only the right clients deserve our full attention." The employees nodded, some with condescending smiles, others with serious expressions, trying to hide how much they feared Gregory's criticism. Ashley, always confident, crossed her arms and gave a slight smirk, while Stephanie, standing next to her, remained silent, listening intently. "Yesterday, I noticed some lapses in how we handled clients. I cannot stress enough the importance of maintaining our standards. The Empyrean brand isn't for everyone, and it's our job to make that clear." Although Gregory didn't mention names, the insinuation that serving unfit clients was a mistake hung heavily in the air. Ashley shot a glance at Stephanie, who quickly looked away. She knew her attempt to be kind to the elderly woman the day before hadn't gone unnoticed. In Gregory's world, kindness towards someone who didn't fit the standard was practically a sin. Once the meeting ended, the employees dispersed to their stations. Ashley didn't miss the chance to take a jab at Stephanie. "See? That's exactly what I'm talking about. Do you really think that woman from yesterday is coming back to buy something?" Ashley said, adjusting a bracelet in one of the displays. "People like that just come in to browse. They have no intention of buying anything." Stephanie took a deep breath, trying to ignore Ashley's mocking tone, but she couldn't stay completely silent. What if she did have money? "Don't you think it's our job to treat all customers with respect?" Ashley laughed, shaking her head. "Respect? This is the world of luxury, darling. Here, respect is for those who can afford it." Stephanie didn't respond. Arguing with someone like Ashley, whose worldview seemed limited to price tags and social status, felt pointless. Still, the discomfort within her grew. Something was deeply wrong with the culture of that store, but as a new employee, she felt powerless to challenge the system. As the morning went on, the flow of customers began to pick up. Wealthy couples, business people, and social media influencers paraded through the store, receiving perfect smiles and meticulous attention. Ashley thrived in this environment, charming clients with her ability to sell expensive pieces while completely ignoring those who didn't measure up. Gregory, meanwhile, roamed the store, observing every interaction with his critical gaze. In a quieter corner, Stephanie was assisting a young couple looking for a birthday gift. Though they weren't extravagant, they were polite and genuinely interested, and Stephanie put in her best effort to provide excellent service. Still, she could feel Gregory's eyes on her. "Stephanie, could you come here for a moment?" he called out in a serious tone. She approached him, her heart racing. "Yes, sir? I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time with clients who, frankly, aren't our target audience," Gregory said, adjusting his glasses as he spoke. "I understand you're new, but I need you to focus on clients who truly represent our brand." "Understood, sir," Stephanie replied, trying to stay calm. But inside, she felt disheartened. What exactly did the brand represent? Only wealth? Was there no room for kindness or humanity in that environment? Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the conversations among the employees were no less toxic. During their break, Ashley and some of the other sales associates laughed and gossiped about the customers. "Yesterday, that man who came in with his wife, asking the price of everything? Classic. If you have to ask, you can't afford it," Ashley said, eliciting laughs from the others. "And that woman from yesterday?" one of the associates asked, referring to the elderly lady. "She looked so out of place here. How does someone even dare walk in dressed like that?" "Bravery or ignorance," Ashley replied with a shrug. "But honestly, I find it amusing. Maybe she'll come back to entertain us again." Listening from afar, Stephanie felt a lump in her throat. The lack of empathy was so glaring it was almost painful. Though she didn't have the courage to speak up, she knew she didn't want to be like them. She knew something had to change. Meanwhile, in his office, Gregory reviewed reports and analyzed sales figures. For him, everything was about profits and prestige. He didn't consider the emotional impact of how customers were treated, as long as the store continued to be seen as a symbol of exclusivity. The behavior of the employees perfectly reflected the culture he had created, a bubble of arrogance and superficiality. By the end of the day, the store's atmosphere still carried the same air of superiority. For most employees, it was just another day playing the role of guardians of luxury. But for Stephanie, something was shifting. She couldn't stop thinking about the elderly woman from the day before or how she had been treated. Every sarcastic laugh, every cruel comment seemed to echo in her mind. And while the store employees carried on with their routines, little did they know that the elderly woman they had so disdainfully dismissed was about to return. And with her, she would bring a lesson that would forever change the story of that place. The next morning began with a different energy at Empyrean. The store, already known for its relentless pursuit of perfection, seemed even more meticulously organized. From the early hours, Gregory Lancaster, the manager, had taken charge, ensuring every detail was flawless. He had received a message from the higher-ups informing him that a significant visit was scheduled for the day, someone critical to the future interests of the brand. Tension hung in the air, and every employee felt the pressure to meet expectations. Gregory was a results-driven man. To him, sales and the exclusivity of the brand defined success. When he learned about the visit, he began speculating who it might be. Perhaps one of the company's top investors? A VIP client who significantly contributed to annual revenue? Whoever it was, he knew that both he and his team, and the store, would be under scrutiny. It was his chance to showcase his ability to manage the brand's most prestigious location. As the day officially began, Gregory called an emergency meeting with the entire team. They gathered in the back area of the store, a space decorated with the same sophistication as the main floor but with less sparkle. The employees were all there, some adjusting their uniforms, others trying to project confidence. Ashley, as usual, was at the center of attention, exuding the air of someone who knew she would play a key role that day. "Attention, everyone," Gregory began, his deep voice commanding the room. "Today, we will be hosting a very important visitor. This is not just any client, but someone who can directly impact the future of Empyrean." He paused, letting his words sink in. His gaze swept across the group, his expression carrying a clear expectation: excellence. "I want everyone at their best. We cannot afford any mistakes or distractions. Whoever serves this person must represent our brand's values: sophistication, exclusivity, and excellence." "Understood." The employees nodded, some more enthusiastically than others. Stephanie, standing at the back of the room, felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Who could this important person be? More importantly, she wondered if it even mattered. Everything at Empyrean seemed like a performance, a carefully choreographed act designed to impress anyone wealthy enough to belong to that world. After the meeting, Gregory began delegating tasks. He assigned Ashley to oversee the main floor's organization, while Stephanie was tasked with reviewing the displays. Though not a glamorous assignment, Stephanie preferred it. In the background, she could avoid the oppressive atmosphere of the main showroom. As she adjusted a display of necklaces, Stephanie observed her colleagues' interactions. Ashley, with her confident demeanor, barked orders as if she were the store manager, while the other employees rushed to follow her directions. Everything needed to be perfect. Handbags aligned with precision, jewelry sparkling under strategically placed lighting, and perfumes arranged like art in a gallery. The environment felt like an orchestra, where every move was carefully calculated to create an impression of perfection. But behind this impeccable facade, a growing nervousness lingered. Everyone knew that the visit could determine not only the store's future but also their own careers. Gregory, more than anyone, seemed to feel the weight of this responsibility. He moved back and forth, adjusting invisible details and issuing orders in a tone that made it clear he wouldn't tolerate excuses. "Stephanie, make sure there are no fingerprints on the display glass," he said as he passed by. "I don't want anything compromising the presentation." Stephanie nodded, suppressing a sigh. Gregory's perfectionism was stifling, but she knew resistance would be futile. As she polished the glass for the third time, she found herself thinking about the elderly woman who had visited the store days earlier. There was something about that woman that continued to linger in her mind. She had an undeniable dignity that starkly contrasted with the superficiality of the store. Stephanie couldn't shake the feeling that the visit had been more significant than anyone realized. Meanwhile, in the break room, conversations among employees reflected the day's nervous energy. Some speculated about the identity of the mysterious visitor, while others discussed potential promotions if the day turned out to be a success. "Do you think it's one of the investors from Europe?" one employee asked. "Could be. I heard they're planning to open more stores in London and Paris," another replied. Ashley, ever confident, interjected. "It doesn't matter who it is. What matters is that we show them what we do best. And, frankly, no one does that better than me." Her words drew laughter from some colleagues, but Stephanie stayed silent. She was tired of the game of appearances but knew she had to play along. After all, her position at the store was still precarious, and she couldn't afford to stir up trouble. As the morning wore on, the main showroom began to fill with customers. Gregory watched every interaction, his analytical gaze evaluating every detail. He knew the visitor could arrive at any moment and wanted everything to be flawless. But as the hours passed, the anticipation grew heavier. Every time the door opened, heads turned, expecting the awaited guest. Yet, hour after hour, there was no sign of anyone. Finally, just before noon, Gregory received a call. He answered immediately, his posture tense. "Yes, Lancaster speaking." "Understood. We'll be ready." When he hung up, he turned to the team with an expression that mixed nervousness and determination. "They're on their way. I want everyone in position. Get ready." The store entered a controlled frenzy as employees scrambled to finalize every detail. The air was heavy with anticipation, and even the customers in the showroom could sense that something important was about to happen. From her position, Stephanie watched the activity unfold, unable to shake the feeling that this moment would be more than just a business visit. There was something in the air, something she couldn't quite define, but she knew it would be significant. When the doors finally opened, all eyes turned toward the entrance. The sound of the glass doors sliding open echoed through the store, breaking the tense silence that had settled. The employees, who had been busy tweaking displays and double-checking every detail, froze immediately, their gazes fixed on the main entrance, where two figures stood outlined by the daylight. On one side was a tall, imposing man in a perfectly tailored suit. He exuded authority and confidence, the kind of presence that silences a room without uttering a word. Some employees recognized him instantly: Ethan Montgomery, foe of the Empyrean brand, a man who rarely made personal visits to his own stores. His arrival alone was a major event, something the staff quickly grasped. But it was the person beside him who caused an even greater stir. The elderly woman who had visited the store a few days earlier stood there, dressed in the same simple and understated manner. Her wool coat, fabric bag, and outdated shoes clashed starkly with the store's luxurious surroundings. Yet somehow, her presence seemed to command the space, as though she were the central figure in a meticulously staged scene. Evelyn walked in with steady steps, her serene but piercing gaze sweeping across the showroom. It was as if she were revisiting every corner, every detail, with a newfound perspective. Ethan walked silently beside her, letting her take the lead. For the employees, the connection between the two wasn't immediately apparent. However, the way Ethan stayed at her side suggested respect. More than that, reverence, though few in the room could understand why. Ashley was the first to break the silence, whispering to a colleague beside her. "I can't believe it. That lady again. What's she doing here with us?" Gregory, on the other hand, looked completely thrown. He had spent the last few days obsessing over preparations for Ethan's visit, but he hadn't anticipated that Ethan would bring someone with him, let alone a woman who didn't seem to belong in the luxury world that Empyrean represented. He quickly tried to compose himself, adjusting his blazer as he approached to greet the CEO. "Mr. Montgomery, what an honor to have you here today. We've been eagerly awaiting your visit," Gregory said, his voice slightly unsteady. Ethan nodded with a faint smile but didn't give Gregory much attention. Instead, he turned to Evelyn as if awaiting her guidance. The elderly woman looked at Gregory, and a chill ran down his spine. There was something in her gaze, a mix of calm and authority, that made him question everything about the situation. Evelyn slowly walked through the showroom, examining the displays and cases with an interest that seemed deeper than that of a typical customer. With each step, the employees tried to piece together what was happening. Some whispered amongst themselves, while others stood frozen, watching with a mix of curiosity and unease. From her spot at the back of the store, Stephanie felt her heart race. She recognized Evelyn immediately and sensed that something big was about to unfold. Over the past few days, she hadn't been able to shake the memory of Evelyn's visit and the treatment she had received. Now, seeing her alongside Ethan, Stephanie felt that her suspicions were about to be confirmed. As Evelyn made her way through the store, her eyes landed on one of the central displays, where the most expensive necklaces in the collection were showcased. She paused for a moment, as if recalling something. Without saying a word, she turned to Ethan, who immediately understood her intent. "Gregory, "Could you show us this necklace?" Ethan requested, his tone calm but firm. The manager nodded quickly and called Ashley to retrieve the item. The sales associate, usually confident in her demeanor, appeared visibly uneasy in Evelyn's presence. She carefully picked up the necklace and placed it on the counter with exaggerated precision. "Here it is, Mr. Montgomery. This is one of the most exclusive pieces in our collection," Ashley said, trying to regain her composure. Evelyn took the necklace in her hands, examining it with the same deliberate calm she had shown during her previous visit. Her hands, though aged, were steady and delicate, like those of someone accustomed to handling valuable items. "It's a beautiful piece," she said finally, offering a faint smile. "But could you tell me what truly makes this necklace so special?" The question, though simple, carried a weight that filled the room. Ashley hesitated for a moment, clearly searching for the right words. "Well," she began, avoiding direct eye contact with Evelyn. "It's made from high-quality diamonds, and the design is exclusive to our brand. A piece like this isn't just an accessory, it's a statement of sophistication and status." Evelyn nodded slowly, still holding the necklace. Her next words, however, sliced through the air like a knife. "Status? That's what it's all about, isn't it? Everything here revolves around status. Who has it, who doesn't? Who deserves to be treated with respect, and who doesn't?" The silence that followed was absolute. The employees stood motionless, as if time had stopped. Gregory, standing nearby, tried to intervene. "Madam, I can assure you that." Evelyn raised her hand, cutting him off without even looking at him. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her presence alone commanded attention. "I'm not interested in assurances, Mr. Lancaster. I'm interested in understanding how a place so focused on appearances could forget what truly matters." She gently placed the necklace back on the counter, but the gesture felt weighted with symbolism. Turning to Ethan, who remained silent and observant, she seemed to signal that her point had been made. "Ethan, dear, you have a lot of work to do here." Her statement made everyone exchange nervous glances. Finally, Ethan stepped forward, addressing the employees. "Let me introduce my mother, Evelyn Montgomery. She's not just one of Empyrean's largest shareholders, but also the person who inspired the values this brand was built on, values that have clearly been forgotten." The revelation landed like a bombshell. For Ashley, Gregory, and the other employees, it was almost impossible to believe that the elderly woman they had treated with such disdain was, in fact, the mother of the most powerful man in the company. Stephanie, on the other hand, felt a wave of relief mixed with admiration. Finally, the truth was out. Evelyn continued, "I founded this company with my husband decades ago because we believed that true luxury wasn't something you could buy, it was how we treated one another. It seems that many here have forgotten that. But don't worry, I'm here to remind you." The impact of her words was overwhelming. Evelyn didn't need to raise her voice or show anger. Her presence and conviction were enough to leave everyone in the store silent, reflecting on their actions. In the minutes that followed, Ethan and Evelyn began discussing immediate plans for changes in the store's operations with Gregory and the employees. For some, like Ashley and Gregory, this posed a direct threat to their positions. For others, like Stephanie, it was a chance for a fresh start. Evelyn's visit had changed everything, and Empyrean would never be the same. The silence that had settled over Empyrean after Evelyn Montgomery's revelation as the CEO's mother and one of the brand's founders was almost tangible. Ethan's words still echoed in the minds of everyone present. Evelyn, standing beside her son, surveyed the room with the calmness of someone who had faced far greater challenges than others' discomfort. But for the employees, that moment was a storm of shame, regret, and, for some, fear of the consequences. Ashley, who until then had been the most confident of the sales staff, felt the blood drain from her face. Her mind swirled with the memory of every word she had said to the elderly woman in the past few days, every snide remark, every dismissive gesture. She had treated Evelyn as inferior, only to discover that the simple woman was, in fact, the matriarch of the entire company. It was more than a shock. It was a public humiliation. Gregory, the manager, tried to regain some sense of control, but even he, with his usually impenetrable demeanor, was visibly shaken. He looked at Evelyn and Ethan with a mix of nervousness and regret, desperately trying to think of a way to salvage the situation. But for the first time in years, his eloquence seemed to fail him. He knew Evelyn's presence wasn't just a casual visit. It was an evaluation, and he already knew what the verdict would be. Evelyn took a few steps forward, approaching the central display where the store's most exclusive products were showcased. The employees watched in complete silence, not daring to interrupt her. She placed her hand on one of the pieces, a necklace shimmering under the carefully positioned lights, and spoke, her calm voice cutting through the air like a sharp blade. "This necklace," she began, holding it delicately, "represents more than just luxury. When my husband and I started this brand, we wanted to create something that transcended appearances. This necklace was meant to be a symbol of beauty and care, something that inspired confidence and admiration, not just for its price, but for what it represents. But looking at this store today, and many of you here, I realize we've failed to convey that message." She placed the necklace back in its spot and turned to Gregory, who immediately straightened his posture, as if that could hide his discomfort. "Mr. Lancaster, can you tell me what Empyrean's core value is?" Evelyn asked, her tone both gentle and relentless. Gregory hesitated for a moment, his words faltering. "Well, Mrs. Montgomery, Empyrean represents exclusivity and sophistication. We are the leading luxury brand, recognized for the unparalleled quality of our products and the personalized service we provide to our clients." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, a subtle expression that somehow managed to be more cutting than any verbal critique. "Exclusivity and sophistication?" she repeated as if savoring the words. "Is that what the brand has become? A closed club for the few, where a person's worth is measured only by the balance in their bank account?" Gregory didn't respond. He knew anything he said would only make matters worse. Evelyn turned to the rest of the team, her eyes scanning each employee. Some avoided her gaze, while others, like Stephanie, met her eyes with a mix of admiration and anticipation. "Let me tell you a story," Evelyn continued, her voice firm yet filled with emotion. "When I was young, I worked in a store very much like this one. Not as a customer, but as an employee. Back then, I had nothing but the desire to learn and the dream of building a better life for my family. I saw how people were treated based on their appearances. I saw the arrogance of some and the kindness of others. And I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to create something of my own, it would be different. It would be a place where people were valued for who they are, not for what they own." There was a pause, and the weight of her words seemed to press down on everyone in the room. Evelyn looked at Ashley, who was now visibly shrinking, and at Gregory, whose face had turned pale. "But when I came here a few days ago, I didn't see that ideal. I was treated as someone who didn't deserve to be in this place. I was ignored, underestimated, and worse still, disrespected. All because my clothes didn't meet your expectations." Ashley felt her knees weaken. The memories of the laughter, the whispers, and the disdainful glances came flooding back like a nightmare. She wanted to disappear, but she was trapped in that moment, unable to escape. Evelyn continued, "I want to make something clear. My appearance, my bank account, or any material possessions I have do not define who I am. And you, as representatives of this brand, should know that better than anyone. This isn't just about selling expensive products. It's about providing service that values the customer as a human being." Ethan, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. "My mother is right. What we've seen here over the past few days is unacceptable, not just because of what happened to her, but because of what it represents for Empyrean as a whole. This brand was built on principles that have clearly been forgotten. But that's going to change, starting today." The employees exchanged nervous glances. It was evident that changes were coming, and no one was sure what to expect. Ethan turned directly to Gregory. "Mr. Lancaster, as the manager of this store, it's your responsibility to uphold the brand's values. And you failed. I won't make any hasty decisions today, but I can assure you this matter will be thoroughly reviewed." Gregory swallowed hard but said nothing. He knew any defense would be futile at that moment. Evelyn stepped forward, addressing everyone in the room. I want each of you to reflect on what happened here. Ask yourselves, are you proud of the work you do? Do you treat people the way you'd want to be treated? Because at the end of the day, true luxury isn't something you can buy. It's something you give to others: respect, dignity, and care. The silence that followed was overwhelming. The employees knew they had been confronted with an undeniable truth. Evelyn didn't need threats or punishments to deliver her message. Her presence, her words, and her story were more impactful than any reprimand could be. When she and Ethan left the store, the atmosphere remained heavy with a mix of emotions. For some, like Ashley and Gregory, there was palpable fear about the future. For others, like Stephanie, there was a sense of relief and even hope. Something was changing at Empyrean, and that visit marked the beginning of a new era for the brand. An era that would return to its roots and the true meaning of luxury. The days following Evelyn Montgomery and her son Ethan's visit were marked by undeniable tension at Empyrean. The impact of the revelation hadn't faded, and every employee knew that a storm of changes was about to sweep through the store. For some, like Gregory and Ashley, anxiety turned into paranoia, as they knew they were the primary targets of Evelyn's criticism. For others, like Stephanie, there was a mixture of relief and anticipation. Finally, the toxic culture and arrogance that had permeated the environment were being confronted. That morning, silence reigned over the main showroom as employees carefully arranged the displays and showcases. It wasn't just the usual pursuit of perfection driving their actions, but the knowledge that their careers were under scrutiny. Ethan had promised that changes would come, and every detail was being evaluated. Gregory entered the store with his usual upright posture, but his expression betrayed the nervousness he felt. He had received an official notice to meet with Ethan that day and knew he would be directly confronted about his failures in managing the store. Trying to maintain his composure, he walked past the employees with minimal interaction, heading straight to his office to review reports that might help justify his position. Meanwhile, Ashley, who usually led the conversations among the sales team, was noticeably more subdued. Her colleagues noticed the change in her behavior. There were no more spiteful laughs or dismissive comments about customers who didn't fit the store's profile. Instead, she seemed lost in thought, rearranging the same display for the third time, as if the task could distract her from the reality she was about to face. Shortly after opening hours, Ethan arrived at the store, this time alone. His presence alone was enough to halt conversations and interrupt the usual flow of activity. He carried a sleek black leather folder and wore a determined expression, signaling that this would not be an ordinary day at Empyrean. Without wasting time, he summoned Gregory to the office. Inside the office, Ethan took a seat at the desk, while Gregory remained standing, awaiting instructions. The silence between them was almost suffocating until Ethan finally spoke. "Gregory, I want you to know that my mother was deeply disappointed by what she witnessed here. And, honestly, so am I." Gregory tried to maintain his composure, but it was evident he was nervous. He began to speak, attempting to justify what had happened. "Mr. Montgomery, I completely understand Mrs. Evelyn's concerns. I can assure you this was an isolated incident and—" Ethan raised a hand, cutting him off. "An isolated incident? Gregory, I've spent the past few days reviewing customer feedback and internal reports. What happened to my mother isn't an isolated case. It's a reflection of a culture you've allowed to take root in this store. And that is unacceptable." Gregory swallowed hard but remained silent. He knew that any attempt to argue would be pointless. Empyrean isn't just a luxury brand. It's a symbol of the values my parents worked so hard to build. And those values have been completely disregarded here. So, I've made some decisions. Ethan's firm tone left no room for negotiation. He opened the folder and pulled out a few documents, placing them on the table. "You will be transferred to another division of the company, where you'll undergo intensive leadership training. This is an opportunity to rethink your approach and demonstrate that you can align with our values. However, your position as manager of this store will be filled by someone else." Gregory tried to hide his shock but couldn't disguise the look of defeat on his face. He knew this was an elegant way of being dismissed, even if it wasn't official. Ethan continued, "This decision isn't just about you, Gregory. It's about the future of Empyrean. We need to rebuild trust, not just with our customers but with our employees as well. From now on, our priority will be creating an environment that fosters respect, inclusion, and authenticity." After meeting with Gregory, Ethan returned to the main showroom, where the employees were waiting anxiously. He gathered the team in the center of the store and began to speak. "Good morning, everyone. As you all know, the past few days have highlighted significant issues with how this store operates. My mother, Evelyn Montgomery, asked me to ensure that Empyrean's founding values are restored. And that's exactly what we're going to do." All eyes were fixed on Ethan. Even Ashley, who typically exuded confidence, appeared small in the face of his words. "Starting today, there will be significant changes here, beginning with leadership. Gregory will be transferred, and a new manager will be appointed. This person will be responsible for implementing a new approach, one that reflects our values of respect and excellence in service." Ethan paused, allowing his words to settle before turning to Stephanie. "Stephanie, you demonstrated something that's been missing here, empathy. My mother mentioned that you were the only person who made an effort to treat her with respect. That didn't go unnoticed." Stephanie's eyes widened in surprise at being singled out. She didn't know what to say, but Ethan continued, "I want you to work directly with me and the new leadership to help rebuild this store. Your attitude is an example of what we expect from all employees moving forward." Stephanie nodded, feeling a wave of relief and gratitude. Meanwhile, the other employees, including Ashley, looked visibly shaken. Change was inevitable, and they knew they would have to adapt. In the days that followed, Ethan began implementing a series of changes in the store. One of the first initiatives was an intensive training program for the entire team, focusing on customer service, inclusion, and empathy. The goal wasn't just to teach practical skills, but to shift the mindset that had taken root in Empyrean. Ashley was one of the first to feel the impact of these changes. She was called in for a one-on-one meeting with Ethan, where she received direct feedback on her behavior. "Ashley, you're a talented salesperson, but your behavior over the past few months has been completely unacceptable," Ethan said. "I want to give you an opportunity to change, but that depends entirely on you." For the first time, Ashley showed vulnerability. She acknowledged her mistakes and promised to work hard to align herself with the store's new values. At the same time, Evelyn began visiting the store regularly, participating in training sessions and sharing her personal experiences. Her presence was inspiring for many employees, especially Stephanie, who saw Evelyn as a role model of leadership and humility. Over time, the changes began to take effect. The store became a more welcoming place, where all customers were treated with the same level of respect and attention. Employees began collaborating more effectively, and the atmosphere, once filled with arrogance, started to reflect the values Evelyn had always championed. Stephanie took on a prominent role within the team, helping implement new practices and serving as an example for her colleagues. Ashley, though initially resistant, began to change her attitude, realizing that the new approach not only benefited customers but also created a more positive work environment. Evelyn, alongside Ethan, observed these changes with satisfaction. For her, it was more than a business victory. It was proof that the values she and her husband had instilled remained relevant, even in a world increasingly consumed by appearances. Ethan's decision to transform Empyrean wasn't just an act of leadership. It was also a tribute to the mother who had inspired him. And for Evelyn, seeing the store return to its principles was the greatest reward she could imagine. The transformation of Empyrean wasn't immediate, but it unfolded like a rising tide, gradually reshaping the landscape as it progressed. The impact of Ethan and Evelyn's decisions began rippling outward, not only among the employees but also in how customers perceived the store. Small but significant adjustments became visible, including a new approach to customer service and subtle yet meaningful changes in the store's organization and operations. The first signs of restructuring came with the arrival of a new manager, Caroline Adler, an experienced professional who had worked with several other luxury brands but whose focus had always been on valuing people. Caroline was known for her ability to transform teams and foster a healthy, collaborative work environment. Her presence brought a new energy to the store. Caroline began her leadership with careful observation. She spent hours walking through the main showroom, watching interactions between employees and customers, analyzing patterns, and taking notes on areas for improvement. Her leadership wasn't authoritarian. Instead, she approached each challenge with calm and a well-thought-out strategy. Unlike Gregory, she believed that a team's strength lay in unity and mutual respect, something that had clearly been lacking at Empyrean. One of the first changes she implemented was ongoing training for all employees. This wasn't just about sales techniques or product knowledge. It also focused on empathy, communication, and creating memorable experiences for customers. Every employee, from sales associates to stockroom staff, participated in these sessions. The trainings were led by experts and included practical activities, simulations of real-life scenarios, and group discussions. The effects of these sessions slowly began to show. Employees who had previously been distant and competitive started working together more harmoniously. There was less gossiping behind the scenes and more constructive conversations. Even Ashley, who initially resisted the changes, began to show signs of transformation. Her experience with Evelyn had shaken her confidence and forced her to reevaluate her priorities. Under Caroline's guidance, she started adopting a more collaborative attitude, though she was still in the process of adjusting. Meanwhile, the store underwent a visual revamp. The goal wasn't to change Empyrean's luxurious essence but to make it more approachable, at least in how customers perceived it. The displays, once designed to dazzle with opulence, now told more personal stories. Instead of showcasing only expensive items, the displays featured thematic collections that highlighted the artisanal craftsmanship behind each piece, emphasizing the human effort involved in their creation. Changes were also made to the store's internal layout. Spaces that had previously felt intimidating were replaced with more welcoming areas where customers could interact with products at their own pace. Small details, such as adjustable lighting and comfortable seating, were introduced to create a more inviting atmosphere. Each decision was carefully planned to align the shopping experience with the values Evelyn championed. Employees began to notice that customers were responding differently to these changes. People who might have previously felt intimidated or overlooked now felt valued. There was an increase in customers praising the service, noting how the store felt more human and authentic. For many, Empyrean was no longer just a place to buy expensive items but a space to enjoy a unique experience. Behind the scenes, Caroline worked to foster a culture of inclusion and transparency. She encouraged regular team meetings to discuss challenges and share ideas. These meetings weren't just formalities but genuine opportunities for exchange, where every employee had a chance to be heard. Gradually, this created a sense of belonging among the team, something that had never existed under the previous management. Stephanie, who had been singled out by Ethan as an example of empathy, thrived in this new environment. Her natural approach and willingness to assist customers made her a central figure in the store's transformation. Caroline often used Stephanie as a reference during training sessions, highlighting her attitude as a model to follow. Meanwhile, Evelyn continued to visit the store regularly, though discreetly. She wasn't an authoritative figure, but her presence had a profound impact. Employees felt they were working not just for a brand but for a greater vision, something Evelyn embodied with her simplicity and authenticity. One of the most significant initiatives introduced by Caroline was an open feedback program. Customers were encouraged to share their experiences, both positive and negative, so the store could continue improving. This program provided valuable insights, from small operational adjustments to deeper reflections on how Empyrean was perceived. Evelyn followed these reports closely and often discussed with Caroline how the changes aligned with the brand's original values. As months passed, the transformation of the store became increasingly evident. The impact wasn't just internal but also market-wide. Other branches began adopting similar practices, inspired by the success of the Fifth Avenue location. For Evelyn, this was more than a business victory. It was the fulfillment of a dream that had begun decades earlier, when she and her husband founded the brand with the hope of creating something that represented more than material wealth. The process wasn't without its challenges. Some employees resisted the changes and ultimately left the store. Others took longer to adapt, and there were moments of tension, particularly during the early months. But over time, the new culture began to take root, and the results were undeniable. By the end of the restructuring period, Empyrean wasn't just a transformed store. It was a symbol of how deep, well-directed change could impact an entire organization. Evelyn and Ethan watched this unfold with pride, knowing they had not only corrected past mistakes but also built a stronger future for the brand. A celebratory event marking the new phase of Empyrean served as the culmination of this transformation. Guests, customers, and employees gathered to honor the legacy of Evelyn and her late husband. The main showroom was decorated with images that told the brand's story, from its humble beginnings to its current success. Standing beside Ethan, Evelyn gave a brief speech. Her words were simple yet profound. True luxury isn't in the objects we own but in how we treat one another. That has always been the essence of Empyrean, and today I'm proud to see that we're closer to that ideal than ever. After the event, as the guests departed, Evelyn stood quietly, taking in the store. Stephanie, now a central figure on the team, approached to thank her once again. "Mrs. Montgomery, none of this would have been possible without you." Evelyn smiled warmly. "No, my dear. This was only possible because you all chose to do what's right." With that, Evelyn left the store for the last time that day, feeling at peace. Empyrean had found its way back to its roots and was ready to continue as a beacon of respect and authenticity. And for Evelyn, that was the greatest legacy she could leave behind. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content. There are more amazing stories waiting for you. Click here and keep watching.